Hey everyone, Hank here, and this video is on the teardown of the Penn Spinfisher. This is the 6th generation. It's a size 6500 and it is equipped with the live liner feature. Now for those of you who aren't familiar with the live liner, the reel typically operates like any other spinning reel with your primary drag located up in your spool here, and you adjust the tension to your preference. I got this set pretty tight just for demonstration purposes. And if you wanted to free line, you would either loosen up on your drag or open up your bail wire and let your bait pull line. With the live liner, you can leave your main drag set where you want. You can leave your bail wire closed and you simply pull back on this lever, and that disengages your primary drag and engages a much smaller drag in the rear of the reel here. So if I pull back to the first position, you can see I can pull line fairly easy. And there's 4 increments, the 4th being the strongest, and it gets a little tighter. Now on the 5th generation, it was simply you had 2 positions. Either you were on your primary drag and you pull the lever back, and you'd be on your live liner and you adjusted the tension by a knob in the rear of the reel. Well, that wasn't really sealed well back in here on the 5th generation, so what they did was they sealed it up better, and you can fine-tune your live liner drag tension, but it is a tool adjustment. The tool comes with the reel here, and you simply take the cap off and you could adjust that tension. We'll get into that a little later on in the video. So let's tear it down and we'll get into see how all that is accomplished. One of the first things I usually like to do is remove the spool, but I'm going to leave that in place for right now for demonstrating later on in the video. You do want to take out these 4 screws on your side cover. Leave this screw in place. Now this lever is in 2 pieces, and there's a screw that holds them together right up in here. So there's a total of 5 screws that you want to remove right now. The 4 on the side case and this screw here. So I'll go ahead and I'll pause the video while I pull them screws out. Okay, so we got the 4 screws for the side cover, the small screw that holds the 2 levers half together, and also the handle's been removed. Now it's time to remove the side case. One thing you want to note is that there is a seal on the shaft that runs through the body of the reel here. So you want to go ahead and remove that as well. And now it's time to pull the side cover off. What you don't want to do when you're removing the side cover is take a screwdriver and wedge it in there and try and pry it off. There is a seal that runs around the perimeter of the body, main body, and is sandwiched in between the main body and the side cover. I've had this part a couple times already. I've done multiple takes on this video, and so mine's going to come out pretty easy. What I recommend is take a block of wood or a plastic rubber mallet and tap around the case to try and break it free, and then just work the side cover off itself. And like I said, mine's going to come off fairly easy. And we'll go ahead and remove that. Now you'll see here, and this is where you got to be careful. There is a spring that just popped off on me. I'll put that in the side. We'll get to that later on. There's going to be several things you're going to notice that are different from your normal spinning reel. Is number 1, this gear, this added gear to your main drive gear, and you can see it moves independently of the main drive gear until it reaches these stops here. And what that's used for is disengaging your live liner. And the reason it's moves independently is because it meshes with some gears on the cam. They call this here, this is your cam, and you can see these gears right here, and they're exposed when I'm in the, let me get that spring out of there before I lose it. They're exposed when I'm in the live liner, so they mesh up with this, this independent gear here, and then when that gear hits the stop when you reel, that's going to go ahead and drive your lever back and put you back on your main drag, your spool drag. So that's what that gear is all about. Another thing you're going to notice is, let me bring the crosswind block back here. You can see that your main shaft, on a normal reel, your main shaft is fixed to your crosswind block, and it's locked in place. There's a screw that goes right through the crosswind block into your shaft, locking it in place so that it can't move in or out, and also can't turn. You want it in the live liner, it's got to be able to turn so that you can work your live liner drag, your drag system back here. So, and the way to accomplish that is there's a clip that's fastened here to your crosswind block, and the clip fits in grooves on your main shaft. Now you can see there's a slot here, and like I said, we'll get into all of this. I just want to leave everything in place right now so you can see it. There's a slot here, and under here is a ratchet gear, they call it, that's affixed, mates up with your shaft. So you'd see on this piece here, this mechanism, you'll see this tab, and it's full forward as I'm on my spool drag, and then it'll move back towards the rear of the reel, very small increments, and then again once when I reel in, this gear meshes, that'll drive that forward. And what that does is we'll take a screwdriver here and line up that ratchet gear, and you can see now that locks my main shaft. And then when I'm in my live liner, I disengage from that ratchet gear and I start putting pressure on the spring, and the more pressure I put on it, the tighter this little drag system will get. And that's your 4 settings. So again, full forward, I lock into my ratchet gear, and then as I move back into my live liner, I disengage the ratchet gear, and I start putting tension on the mini drag washers back in here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the spool for right now, and we'll go ahead and get into tearing this live liner drag down. So next we'll go ahead and we'll remove the clip that holds the spindle on, or the shaft, the main shaft, I'm sorry. So you just remove this screw, and we'll get a small flathead screwdriver, and we'll pull that retaining clip up, and you can see here how it's shaped. And what that does is that fits into the grooves on your shaft here. So it allows it to spin, but keeps it locked from moving in and out of the reel. Now you could go ahead and remove the main drag gear. We'll remove the cap from the end. And you can see that the cap is gasketed, and also there's a seal. Sometimes the seal stays in place on the reel. There's also another rubber seal right here. So they did a good job at sealing the back end up here in the 6th generation. A gasket in there and that seal. We'll go ahead and pull the crosswind block out. And now we'll go ahead, and this is how you adjust the tension on your live liner drag. You take the tool that they give you with the reel, and you just go ahead, and it doesn't take much. It's a quarter turn will make a big difference, so just keep that in mind as you're tightening that down. Now we'll go ahead and we'll remove that adjustment nut. It is fine thread that's on there. And we'll go ahead and tap out what we can get out here. There's I call it the clicker assembly. Maybe I could use the shaft to try and help that out. Not really. Take a pair of needle nose and remove that clicker assembly. Don't worry, there's going to be a lot of pieces coming out of here, and we'll get them all lined up. Show you how everything goes back in place. You got a spring here. This is what's going to go ahead and put your tension on your drag washers. And that should come out fairly easy. Just turn it upside down. There we go. Now, remember I said about the ratchet gear. Now that ratchet gear is held in place by a clip. What I recommend is get that clip and push it down towards the body of the reel. You don't want to pry it out because it may spring off on you. We use 2 screwdrivers. Just kind of work that off of there without losing it, hopefully. There we go. Put that off to the side. We'll go ahead and we'll remove the ratchet gear. So let's line all that up so we can take a look at it. So the first in place is your clip, right? And that clips your ratchet gear. Here, let me see if I could show you a good picture of that. Trying with my big clumsy fingers here, but you'll see there's notches all around that, and that's what that tab fits into. That ratchet gear mates up with your main shaft, and when that tab comes in there, it locks your shaft, keeps your shaft from spinning. So you got your clip, you got your ratchet gear. You're going to have your spring that puts tension on all of this. Then there'll be a metal washer with 2 flat spots on it. And let's see if we could show that in the reel here. That's them flat spots are machined in the body of the reel, so that washer locks in place in the body. Then you're going to have there's actually several friction washers in place here. This sometimes this comes apart on you. Don't be afraid though. We'll get her back together. So then it'll be this is your live liner drag washer, and the way to tell that apart from this friction washer is there's a 2 friction washers with a piece of metal sandwiched in between them. So that'll be the next in place. Then you have another metal washer with the flats. And you're going to have your friction washer. Then this washer, actually, sometimes it comes off, sometimes it doesn't. But that keeps your clicker in place. And then you have Actually, there's 2 more friction washers on here. Go ahead and pop them off. And really, I tend to use only one. I put the 2 back in place just for this video, because I don't really use that big of a live bait that I need that much drag on in the live liner. So there's pretty much, let me see if I can get this all in view here. I'm gonna have to move it all down. So you got your clip, your ratchet gear, your spring, metal washer with flats, another, your drag washer, another metal washer, friction washer. You got the washer that's going to cover up your clicker assembly there. You have 2 friction washers, and I'm still got to get more room here. Your clicker assembly. Then you have 2 friction washers that ride on top of that. Then you have an eared washer that fits in the, mates up with the body, and your tensioning nut, and of course your cap. I don't have enough room for the cap, but that's your whole entire live liner drag system. So what I'm going to do, I pretty much clean this up. I'm just going to wipe it down inside, and I'll go ahead and get some drag grease on these washers, and we'll reassemble it. Now, like anything else, taking something apart is easy. Putting it back together is the hard part. So take it easy here, and then we'll get into, once we get that back together, we'll get into how everything takes place in here. Works up in there. Alrighty, so I'm going to pause the video while I clean all these up and grease them up, and be right back. Okay, got everything cleaned up, greased up. Now we'll go ahead and reassemble it. So what I like to do is take my shaft, and I'll put that through, and this helps guide my ratchet gear in place. Upset it in there. Make sure that the groove that the clip is on is in the forward position. Slide that into place, and we'll go ahead and reinstall the clip. Make sure she's seated. Check it out. I did put a little grease in there, so that's good. Now, next thing is, so you got your spring here, and this is what's going to put tension on your drag washers. So this, you'll see there's 2 tabs. The smaller tab is going to fit in a slot down in the body. Go ahead and get that in place. Before I go any farther, let's go ahead and get our clicker back in our holder here, and it's home. Take the round washer that's got the square center on it. That'll fit down over the top. Then you got your friction washer. Remember that this one doesn't have the metal sandwiched in between. That'll be the first one to go on. And you have a metal washer with the flat stops on it. And then your drag washer here. Set that in place. Now, you kind of run out of room here. So the next thing I like to do is take this metal washer and guide it down into place here. And you want to make sure that the squares are lined up with the square in the body. Test it out, make sure she moves free in there. And then go ahead and get your assembly. Again, now what we do here, what I like to do here is, again, take the shaft, put it up through there. And then take this whole assembly and line it up on your shaft and fit her down in place. Now you'll notice that there's some slots in the reel there for this eared washer. That clicker will fit down in there, and then you just kind of, this is where it gets a little hard, you just kind of work it back and forth until you can feel it drop in place. Sometimes you have to take a small screwdriver and compress that clicker to get it to drop down into where she wants to go. And you'll know when you're there, because you'll expose a bunch of threads, and you'll also hear the clicking action. So that's that. Now the next thing to go in place is going to be your 2 friction washers. Well, I'm only going to put one back in on this. I'm going to put my other one on the side. And then you take your eared washer, set that in place. And finally, your adjusting nut. And this one, it's so small, such small threads, fine threads. It's really difficult to get it started. You want to be careful that you don't cross thread. So I kind of work it back and forth with a little tension, so I can feel it drop into the threads. And oh my God, my fingers are clubbers here. Let's see. This, I may even pause the video if I don't get this quick here, because this is where I struggle. And it's just so hard. Boy. It's the worst part. For me, anyways. It's like a piece of work. There we got it. So we got a thread. And like I said, I like to get a full thread on it. And then I'll tune it later. At least get a full thread on it. And there's your assembly back in place here. And you can check that. I mean, you could put your spindle back in, or your main shaft back in. And just go ahead and take a bigger screwdriver, like I said, lock it into place. And then you can put a little tension on it to make sure that, yep. And as I relieve that tension, perfect. And that's pretty much your drag washer assembly anyways in the rear here. Now we'll go ahead and we'll move to the mechanism on the side cover. So you have this spring, and the spring will, the spring has like a hook on it, and that hook wants to go inside this gear, and then the other end will fall in place in this holder here, right there. But let's go ahead and we'll take this apart and see how this all works. So this is the cam that I was talking about. Well, we could go ahead and we could remove this screw now. And we'll pull out the shaft. Now, I like I said, I did previous takes on this video, so I have pretty much everything clean. I just got to go ahead and re-grease everything. So again, you're going to have another seal right here on that shaft, sealed on both sides. Put that off to the side before I lose it. Go ahead and remove the cam. And that cam has a little spring loaded down in there, you can see. And then this mechanism, this is your tab. And I'm not gonna go ahead and remove that. All that is so you got a tab in the rear here, and then you got this round, I guess we'll call it like a stop. And what that does is that stop will line up on the cam here, and that lines up and fits in these. You'll see there's little concaves in here, and it'll line up with them, and that's what's giving you tension on that spring. As that moves forward and back, it's either going to be full forward, you're locked into your ratchet gear, and as that cam increases, it starts putting pressure on your spring here, which you see will put pressure on all your on your rear drag system, your live liner drag system, on them friction washers. So we'll go ahead and leave that there. I mean, I'll just put a little bit of oil in there. I do have some grease in there, and she moves free. But that's how that works. And as you can see, again here you got this gear. This lines up with your lever, and that's going to rotate you back and forth out of live liner to main spool drag. And this is the gear that's going to mesh up with your gear on your main drive gear. And as I lock into position, I'm going to drive that gear and take my lever forward and put me on the spool. Then as I pull back, you can see I go ahead and mesh in with these gears, right? As I pull back on the lever, it'll go like this here, mesh in with them, and then as I spin the reel, I'll go ahead and lock up, and that's that. So you do want to make sure that this spins free. If this is sticky, you could have some issues there. And it's pretty simple. There's a clip here, and there's a spring underneath. So just keep in mind as you're taking these apart. Oh, another thing I want to point out is right here you have a shim. Now sometimes there'll be 1, 2, 3 shims. I don't think I ever seen 3. I've seen 2 on your main drive gear, and you want to keep that in mind. Don't lose that. Put that back on. Make sure that goes back in place, because that does make a difference in the performance of it. They set that at the factory. So we could go ahead and remove this. Show you how that's held in place is simply by a clip here, a C clip, E clip. But like I said, you just got to remember that there is a spring underneath, and you got to be careful that you don't send it flying around the shop. That spring it locks onto this gear. It's bent to lock onto that gear, and it also fits down in a slot on your main drive gear. So go go ahead and pull that off. You don't want to bend it out of shape or anything, so you just kind of take it easy as you're removing it. I'm having difficulty here, but I'm not going to do any more takes on this video. There we go. Let's work that off. And it's giving me some difficulties here. Kind of fits in a groove underneath. Once I get it off, we'll take a look at that. Just work it off here. Somebody's having fun. Okay. And there she is. So, like I said, without that spring, you know, I mean, it'd be a little rough to mesh your gears together. It gives you a little cushion as you're meshing your gears together. So that's pretty much the differences with your live liners. So between the main drive gear and the way your spindle is held onto your crosswind block here, like it says, that just goes through. And what you do is you line your tabs up. Your grooves on your shaft with your tab there, and there she's locked in place. But like I said, again, it allows it to spin as well. So I think we broke it down pretty good, with the exception of this mechanism in here, but it's really not complicated. You shouldn't have any issues, hopefully. If you do, you'll just have to take off this anvil and then go ahead and wipe everything down there if your grease got cruddy and it's holding this back and not allowing it to move freely. It does want to, you want to be able to, it wants to be able to move without any restrictions to it. So we're good there. Now let's put this mess back together. Again, this spring has got to, well, let me show you here. I don't know if, hopefully you can see this. So right here there's a groove, a space in between here, and that's where that spring's got to get into there and also lock into that slot there. So you kind of want to work that around, get it under the groove, and then while maintaining that in the slot there. And it's get a little difficult. Kind of spring it out and let it fall back into place. And I really don't want to bore you with this, watching me struggle here. So let's see. There we go. And what you got to do is, now you got to get your gear and there's a little slot right there. That's got a hook into that. Actually, hold on one second, guys. My apologies, I put this on upside down. Huh. That's better. So that, this pen wants to be facing up. Let me take that back off. You'll see, I don't know if you can see it, there's a bend in that clip right here, and that wants to be, am I in the view here? This pen wants to be facing back up, facing up. So go ahead and let's try this one more time. Get our slot in there. There we go. That's much better. And take your gear. And let's get a little tricky too. You just get that hooked in there. Actually, what we're going to do is pop that up, kind of hold it up off of the gear, like that. And we'll go ahead and attempt to get that hooked on there. I don't know, maybe you guys got into this yourselves and you got an easier way to do this. Well, it's a bear, especially when you got old ass eyes like mine. There we go. Struggling. I know guys are watching this probably saying, damn it, buddy. Just do this, just do that. I know it. I know it. There we go. Now we're hooked. Okay, so I'll go ahead and wind that up just a little bit. Not too much. I don't want to. I'm happy with that. And we'll just simply put the E-clip back on. I said you don't want that dragging either. You want that to move fairly free like that. So let's go ahead and we'll reinstall our cam. Okay, now what I like to do is pull this back as far as I can and let that fit into the highest point of that cam there. And go ahead and reinstall, lock that cam down in place. So you just want to make sure that you're not cross-threading anything. So don't go forcing your screws in. If they don't feel right, don't force them in. Now, being that I'm in the furthest most position, I'm going to go ahead and line up my shaft, my gears like that. Okay. And then we'll go ahead and we'll lock that back in place. Clean some of that grime out of there. Put our seal on. Put our half a lever on. And that mates up with the, you'll know when you got her on there right. Has to be able to mate up with your shaft here. For whatever reason, there we go. And actually, I told you guys something wrong there. I mean, this shaft should be spun this way. So, highest point of the cam, the gears here, all the way to that point right there. Seal back in place. Line up our cam, our handle. Okay, then we'll go ahead and lock the screw in place. You need, like, I don't know, tiny fingers. And I screwed up. Okay, let's give it one more try here. We're in place there, as far as we can go. Just having difficulty. I know what I got to do. It's just that my fingers don't want to allow me to do it. Trying to hold all this together. Be a little challenging. Success. Okay, so that's pretty much your live liner, with the exception the spring's got to go back in place. Now you can see here there's kind of like a hooked in and again a straight edge. The straight edge is going to fit inside this hole right here on this post, and the hooked in is going to go inside here, gets hooked in there. It's probably better off like having the reel in the lever in the full rear position, and just kind of get that popped into place. And that assists you when you're reeling in. It'll pop you back into your spool position. But be careful. Just hold on to that spring if you're exercising it, because it could come out flying on you. And you can lose it. But that's pretty much what you got going on there. Okay, so I could probably tighten up on that screw a little better. That's it. So again, just check the action, make sure everything's working like she should, and we're good. Now, so this is your main drive gear bearing. It's a sealed bearing. To take that out, you simply move the 3 screws, the retaining screws. So you'll notice the cap. I have the cap on the side cover because I'm left-handed. Your righties, that your hand will be in on this side. So now we'll go ahead and we'll you'll see there's a seal in there. You don't want to jeopardize that seal, so take a, well, I really don't have, let's see, we'll take the end of the paintbrush here, and you could work your bearing out. So what you got there is you got your seal retainer, and your bearing. So just check your bearing, make sure that it doesn't feel crunchy or grindy or anything like that. Make sure it doesn't have any play in it. I really don't do anything other than I'll put some oil on it and, you know, let that set in place for a little bit. I don't know that the oil actually gets in there with the seal, but normally when I'm doing this, I get into a lot of other things, and so I'll set them off to the side. Let's let that oil try and seep down in there. And you have the same on the main body. You have another bearing over here. To get at that, you're going to want to remove your crosswind gear. And that's simply, you just take the screw out. Now, on the bottom of the crosswind gear is going to be like a wear ring, a wear washer. It's Teflon, I think. I'm not really sure what it's made out of. If you feel that that needs to be replaced, that simply you just pop that off, and that's what you have there. And the same thing with this seal. You just go ahead and remove the 3 screws. Well, keep your bearing held in place. Try to get my hands out of the way. Go ahead and work that system out. And I'll put a little bit of oil on there. Set these off to the side. Now, now's the time you go ahead and clean all your old grease out. I like to use warm water. I don't like using any kind of cleaners or anything in there. I just take some warm water, and I'll wipe everything down, soak it. We'll go ahead and we'll remove the rotor. And this cover here is that's your locking mechanism for your rotor nut. There's 3 screws you want to remove there. And pop that off. There is a seal up underneath there, as you can see. Go ahead and remove the rotor nut, and that's 5/8. There's a seal as well right there. Go ahead and pull your rotor nut off. Also, what came out, there's a shaft bushing right there. Now we'll go ahead and we'll remove our pinion gear. Now, this mechanism here, this is your, so you have 2 anti-reverse systems. You have an anti-reverse bearing under here, and this is your anti-reverse pawl. And what that does is that lines up, you know, fits in these grooves in here, so, and locks your reel, or locks your rotor. So it's another line of an anti-reverse mechanism. And so we'll go ahead and this will actually pull off. Okay, and that's spring loaded as well. Allows it to I guess you could wind it up, you know, and it just kind of works with your pawl here, keeps it aligned. Now, to remove the pinion gear, we'll go ahead and remove this cover. One thing I want to mention, when you're taking these reels apart, it's best to take a lot of photos, because you could get lost here. It's very easy to, you want to, this plate's only going to go on in one direction. You can see it's grooved except this I don't know what you call it. But anyways, so it fits in there nice. It can only go on one way, but there are little things that you want to take note of. Okay, so take that cover off. Again, there's another seal right here. And you have a bearing. There's a retaining bushing for that bearing. As we pull this out, that'll come out with it. And you're going to notice that it's grooved. The smaller groove wants to go towards your rotor. So we'll go ahead and remove that retainer. We have a shim on top of that. And we'll go ahead and pop that bearing out. And again, I'll put a little oil on there. check it, make sure that she's free. No play in it. We'll add a little oil. Set her off to the side. Then you have, this is your anti-reverse bearing here. There's a bushing, or a section of the bearing that'll come out, and a final bearing here. Check that, make sure she's free. Nothing crazy, no chunking or grinding. We'll add a little oil to that. Set that off to the side. And you just want to inspect all your gears, make sure everything's no flat spots. It looks okay. I had already taken this all apart, so I already examined everything. I mean, I have no problems. Everything looks good. And just clean everything up, you know, and then re-grease it, reassemble it. So that's what I'll do. I'll pause the video now and I'll grease up my bearings or my gears, and we'll reassemble. And that's pretty much what you should have right now at this point. So we'll go ahead and pause while I clean everything up and grease it. Okay, so I went ahead and re-greased everything. One thing I didn't get into here was this piece of rubber right here, and this is what they call your rotor brake. And we'll go ahead and take that off. So these reels, I guess they call it like an anti-trip. So when you crank on the handle with an open bail, the bail will only go mid position. And it's a manual trip. You have to help the bail close the rest of the way. And the reason being is if and I don't know if anybody else, but I've experienced it quite a few times where, man, you really wind up and go for that long cast. Next thing you know, your bail wire trips and your line stops immediately because your drag is set, and you just snap, your whole rig goes flying a lot farther than you could ever cast it seems. But so this is just a piece of rubber, and if you need to change this, what you would have to do is just go ahead and remove your anti-reverse paw. And that's a little E-clip right there. You take that off. Now keep in mind again, another spring under there, and you simply just remove that. That's that. And good thing I took it off. There's a little bit of crud in there that I missed. Go ahead and clean some of that out of there. And that's pretty much that. Okay. And it'll only go on in one way. There's little tabs right here that it'll line up with. And you just go ahead and get everything set in place, which I'm kind of goofed up right now. There we go. And you go ahead and put your screws back in. Oops. Jeez. But a bunch of you are like, what the heck, Hank? Haha. Let's try the old grease on the tip of the screwdriver. There we go. And you'd see here you got an arm that comes down as I open, right? That's going to dig into that rubber a little bit, and then as you reel, there's nothing. It's only gonna, that rubber will compress, and as you reel, that rubber will decompress and let you get midways, and then what you got to do is just go ahead and finish the job. So we'll get into that a little bit. Now we'll reinstall our anti-reverse paw, and as you can see, there's a spring here. That spring wants to go down over your post, okay, and then it lines up with your. There is a section on here that it's going to line up with. Kind of work it together. Probably should have cleaned my glasses too before I did this video. Huh. Yeah, okay, there's the groove. There we go. Just make sure that nope, we don't have the tension on there right. Sorry. There's a groove right here that spring is going to fit into. And that's all you were really looking for, that kind of action there. It's not crazy action. Put your clip back on. That's that. Now we could go ahead and reinstall our pinion gear. We'll take the so this is a little bit different of a bearing. It doesn't really have the blue seal on it. That one on first. Go ahead and slide that down on our pinion gear. Add a little more grease right around here. That down in there. Make sure that bearing's seated. It's home. Okay. And we'll take our anti-reverse bearing, put that in place. Clutch. There we go. And if I'm calling these things the wrong name, that's because I really don't know what they call them. So, all right, now next is our other bearing. Well, actually, our holder. Let's get it in our holder here. just like this. Fit that in place. Okay. Then we'll take our cover plate, put that on. And the 3 screws that hold that in place. Here, start it. Maybe that's the wrong screw. Is that, let's see here. Oh, that's the right screw. Just having a hard time. Should pause this while I'm doing this because I know how annoying it could get watching somebody struggle like this. It's kind of boring watching other people put screws in. Oh, brother. And that noise you hear is my wife vacuuming above my head. But I'm not doing another video. This is it, guys. So just gotta bear with that. Okay, now we'll drag these home. And you just want to take them down evenly, kind of like if you were putting a car tire on. Although there's only 3 screws here, so just a little bit at a time. Sure, everything's good there. Spinning free. You just see here. Let me use a screwdriver. Give it a little extra torque. One is too big, one is too small. This one's just right. And where did I screw up here? Big time. Well, let me pause this and I'll get back to how I screwed up. Okay guys, this is where I messed up. So I put the anti-pall back on. You'll notice, or the anti-reverse pall, you'll notice there's a little tiny tab right here. That tab has got to fit up and down in a stop. So it kind of gets stopped there. I didn't have it there, and when I locked that plate back on, I didn't have the movement. So that's got to go down, and it'll only allow it to come so far. So just make sure, keep that in mind when you're putting that back together. Put the clip back on, and there we go. Not really. No, I lost my spring tension. So again, give me a second. We'll be right back. Okay, so now we're back. What was happening to me is I lost my point of connection there, or my stop on the bottom of the spring. So now, as you can see, that spring is pretty far away from the main body. And if you can see here, you have 2 posts on your anti-paw or your anti-reverse paw, a smaller post and a larger post. Larger post wants to be facing upward, and the smaller post has to lock in behind the stop right here. So we'll go ahead and we'll get that installed correctly. And there is a groove right there that the spring latches into or locks into. So go ahead and get that caught up in there. And try and get everything in place at the same time. So you gotta kind of hold the spring in, get her down into place there. Let me help that spring. Snap it up in there. And there we go. And put our clip back on. And we'll put the plate back on, and I'll pause it again because I'm not going to have you go through the pain of watching me try to get them screws back in place. But sealed down, lined up with your screw holes, and just make sure that you got that nice action there on your anti-reverse paw. So I'll pause it while I'm going to put them 3 screws in. Okay, back in action. Now we'll go ahead and we'll reinstall our seal. And our bearing. Now, don't force that in, just kind of, because it is a tight fit, you just kind of walk it into place. Make sure she's seated. And here we go with the screws again, guys. A little bit of grease. Oh, my bad, my bad. That was the wrong screw. And we'll do the same for the other side. So you have your seal, your keeper, I guess we'll call that. Set that down into place. Make sure it looks good, not pinched up or anything. The bearing. I said don't force this in, just kind of a little bit at a time all the way around it. You'll feel it, and she'll drop in place. Your screws. course, got a little malfunction there. Now, your friction washer. I'll add a little more grease to that. Not a lot. I don't go crazy. I also greased all in through my gears there. Go ahead and drop your crosswind. Oh, you know what? That's one thing I didn't show you when I was taking this apart, and hopefully I didn't lose it here. There's bushing. Bushing that goes on there. And you're going to have to give me a second while I find it. Okay, so there's a bushing. When I was taking it apart, I didn't show you. There's a bushing that fits over that post there. And you go ahead and put your crosswind block in, or gear. I'll screw that into place. And I did forget the shim. That shim goes up under here. We'll get to that later on. Before I won't put you through that pain. So, okay, we're looking pretty good. Next thing you would want to do is install your crosswind gear. But let me pause it, and I'll go ahead and get that shim up here on my pinion gear. Okay, so I reinstalled the shim, and then you simply just put that over and make sure you check the action. And we're good there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this off, all this off to the side for now before we go any farther, and we'll look at the rotor itself and how the rotor works. So, like I said, this is a anti-trip rotor. So when you reel, it's only going to go midways, and then you're going to go ahead and manually close your bail. It's really not a lot. I mean, you got your bail wire. You got a seal here on the top. No seal on the bottom here, but however, there is a seal that's underneath the nut. So sealed pretty well. Anyways, let's go ahead and make sure everything's clean in here. If you're a little stiff, you don't have a springy action like that, what you want to do is take this apart, clean it. You have a bearing here, assembly here for your line spool. So we'll go ahead and we'll remove the bail wire. Actually, a bigger screwdriver. Let's see, is this big enough? A little sandy there. And you're going to have a bushing, your bearing. Go ahead, your bail wire you should be able to turn it and remove it. Should pop out of there. Before I go sending any of this off, let's see, that's a little snug on there. There we go. corrosion in there. So you got your bushing. This should really just slide right off of here. Having a little hard time there. I mean, it's spinning free, which is what you want, but I'd really like to get this off to show you what's in there, and I don't know why she's not. Why she doesn't want to come off. You got a little corrosion there. Well, let's set that to the side for right now. We'll get into the other workings. There's nothing really up in here. It just moves freely. Go ahead and pull the screw out, but sand and that will get up in there. I like to take them apart, clean everything up, wipe everything down. That's basically all you have there. Take this cover off. You see, you're going to have a spring in here. And there's like a pawl, I guess you could call it. I don't know. And you can hear the sand crunching around in there. So I'm going to go ahead and take this all down. Yeah, see about working that bushing off there. Just keep in mind this is all under pressure. Like you see, there's grit, sand in there. We'll go ahead and we'll clean all that out, and we'll get her back together. This is the arm that extends down in, and I'll just go ahead and get all this grit out of here, clean it all up, and then we'll put it back together. So while I'm cleaning that, I'll put us on pause again. Okay, so now we got everything cleaned up. Now it's time to just put it all back together. So you got your trip keeper or helper, long side, short side. Short side is going to go up, long side in towards the cup. Okay. Then you got a spring. The spring is going to fit in this groove, and you got I don't know another lever. Now what I like to do is I'll go ahead and I'm not going to put grease in here this time. I'm just going to maybe load a little bit of oil on the spring. Seemed like the grease just kept the sand in there. I like to put the cover on. And with the screws. Seem to be lined up just right. Always afraid of cross thread, and then you're done, you know. Just doesn't seem to be lined up just right. There we go. Snug that down. Now, you're going to notice here that there's like a slot. That's going to be where this arm under here is going to fit into that slot. This tab is going to want to fit right in that hole. So what you got to do is just kind of work it all together. Get that started first. Then get that lined up there. Just hold it and make sure that you're good. Put a little oil in there. We'll go ahead and install the screw. It's a little bigger. You think I have a little easier time. Tighten that down. Check the action. Good. Now, I was able to get this apart. So what you have going on now is like a bushing. That'll go and fit in place there. Small ring outwards. Then you have your line guide. And there's a bearing that goes inside there, and actually it's only going to fit in one way. And I'll put a little oil even though it's sealed. That'll go on here. And there's another bushing that's going to fit over here like this. And you could go ahead and put that together. I wouldn't drive this home just yet. I can take her home. I'm just going to go ahead and just get the screw started. Because we got to be able to get the other side on. That kind of turns and locks into place. Fits in. And then we'll put the screw on. Tighten that down. And we'll take the screw home. Check the action. And there you have it. So the rotor's been serviced, trip lever serviced, looking good. Now we'll go back to the main body. So the next step is we want to install our drive gear. Get that in place. Just check, make sure everything's free, looking good. Go ahead and install your shaft. Well, let's try and get this lined up here, that pin for our cross wind block. We'll take that all the way so that it's right there at the rear of the reel. Go ahead, put your, well, before we go any farther, let's put this bushing in. Right there, this bushing. Right. put our rotor on. Oh, I didn't show you this. I put that back on. You just want to make sure that you got good motion there. It'll lock up. It falls into a lock there, but that'll trip when you reel. But just make sure you got that nice motion going on there. We'll go ahead and put our rotor on. Should And you got your nut. Your nut's only going to go on in one way. Lock that down. You could drive that home pretty good. Make sure you got. Yep. Nice. Now we'll line our pin up with the rear of the reel there. Oh, jeez. Hold on. Go ahead and put your seal in place. Put your nut lock, your cap on. Lock your nut in place. Now go ahead and put your main shaft in. Well, put your crosswind block on. Take your main shaft through. Fit it into your ratchet gear and through right through the back of the reel. Make sure that them grooves are lined up right at either edge of your crosswind block. Put your clip back in place. You want to get the right screw for that. Lock her now. And at this point, because that pin isn't in, that should all spin free. It does. Now, don't forget your shim. Put that in place. Now to work your side cover on, it's a little tricky. You're going to have to move the lever back and forth sometimes to get everything to line up right. Just kind of put that in place. Don't force it on, just kind of work everything together there. And there she goes. She's all lined up. Lever's good. Then you could go ahead and put your screws in. Four screws for your side cover. Trying to keep this video as short as I can, so I'm going to go ahead and pause it. You'll also want to put your seal on your other side and your other half of your lever and the screw. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. I'll pause it while I'm putting that together. Okay, so screws are all in place. We'll go ahead and install the handle. Maybe. What the heck? These are the simplest things, right? There we go. Going the wrong way, dude. Okay, so of course, let's check the bail wire. Partly closes, manual trip. Now we'll check the live liner. So there we go. We're good. A little tighter, even tighter, and tightest, and perfect. And she's locked in place. Nice. So if you got to that point, we're doing good. We're doing good. Now all you got to do is, if you want, like it says, you could fine tune your live liner drag by, taking this nut. You don't want to go crazy. First, don't put it. Disengage the live liner, and maybe go a quarter turn. Check it. You don't want to go nuts on it. I said I didn't put in that second friction washer on the end there because I really don't use bait that's that large that I need that's that big of a drag, but you may have a different situation. So go ahead and we'll put the seal on and we'll cap this up. Put this other cap on, and next we'll look at the drag system in the main spool. Okay, so normally this is the first thing I do before I even start working on reels is take masking tape and wrap my line, but I didn't in this case because I wanted to do some demonstrations. Only because you're going to get grease, grime, oils, everything all over your hands, and you don't want to contaminate your line. So it's good practice. Basically, what you have here, this mechanism here is just a spring that keeps your line holder in place. You got a little piece of metal down here. You'll see that spring loaded. That gives you your clicking sound from your spindle as your drag is being pulled. So that'll fit in them grooves and give you your clicking noise. And you got your cap. Now, I never really took this apart, never really felt the need. Never really got into what's inside there. But main drags. So you got a spring here that you're going to want to just be mindful of as you're taking this apart, because she will go sailing on you. Kind of cover it up as you're taking that apart, and there are your drag washers. So you got a drag washer, metal washer, another drag washer, another metal washer, drag washer, friction washer, and a metal washer. So just like to go ahead and clean all the grime and dirt or whatever got in there out. That's pretty much it. It's pretty simple, really, to tell you the truth. So we'll wipe that all down, clean that up. And There's sand and everything that gets in there. Just kind of wipe all that out of there. There you have it. Now, we'll go ahead and apply a little bit of grease. And just stack them all back together again. And I don't go berserk with the grease, just kind of give it some lubrication. You don't want them heating up and have a premature failure. Metal washer. Friction washer. And they fit in place. They get locked in place with their little tabs. You know what, we're going to make this a little simpler. We'll just paint some grease on that metal. Stack this in there. A little grease there. And your final metal washer. Wipe that all down. And that's it. That's simple. The 5th generation is a little different. You got a stack of washers on top, and then there's a stack of washers also on the bottom. I'll probably do a video on them as well. They do have a 5th generation. Now this has got to be a little tricky. You just got to make sure that, like I said, you don't send this sailing across your shop or wherever you're working on it. Just get it locked down in place. Make sure she's seated in her groove. And go ahead and install it on your reel. Here the clicker. Good deal. Put your drag nut on. And there you have it. Complete service Penn Spinfisher SSVI 6th generation live liner. I hope this video helped if you guys do your own work. And thanks for watching.